Aloha everyone, my name is Rob Haak. I am from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, otherwise known as HPEC. We are a nonprofit based in Honolulu that is a quasi-offshoot of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We're one of 61 DECs, District Export Councils, around the country, but there's no question that we are the farthest away from the Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C. And we are tasked with helping Hawaii and Pacific Island companies export. We're very fortunate to receive a grant from DBEDT, who in turn receives a grant from SBA that allows us to put on these seminars and webinars and perform one-on-one company mentoring sessions. So we'd like to thank very much DBEDT and SBA for that. Today, you can see the agenda here that I've shared for our event today is international trade shows, which is great. As somebody who's spent a lot of his career in international trade shows, they've been more or less dead for the past 3 years, but I think they're coming back with a vengeance, even in countries that were pretty conservatively locked down the past 3 years. A lot of our Hawaii and Pacific Island companies are looking forward to getting back to Japan and Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, China, some going to Europe, Brazil, Mexico, Canada, etc. And these trade shows are, as I said, coming back and they're ready to go, and we have several that the Hawaii state will be subsidizing later this year that you could get involved in. But also there's plenty of other shows out there that might be very specific to your industry. So that's what we'll talk about today, a little bit of some of the pavilions that Hawaii will have, but then some do's and don'ts of going to, preparing for, and what to do after an international trade show. So we'll talk all about that later. Our first speaker today is Jamie Lum, who is the manager of the HiSTEP program at DBEDT, and she will talk to us about some of the specifics of HiSTEP, which is the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program. So Jamie, please.
All right, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for everyone on Zoom. I am Jamie Lum with DBEDT, as Rob already mentioned. We do have a program called the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program, or HiSTEP, which we receive funds from the SBA annually on a competitive basis, as Rob mentioned, for this program. And so we actually don't do this in a bubble. We work with a lot of different partners like HPEC, like the Small Business Development Centers, the Women's Business Center, or in Hawaii that would be the Mink Center, the Veterans Business Opportunity Center, just a number of other organizations that help small businesses to help Hawaii companies that are interested in exporting. And you can be a new to export company, you can be a company that's never exported before, or a company that may already be exporting and wanting to expand in some way. But these are the three components basically of our HiSTEP program, which is our export readiness, of which this webinar is part of that series. It's a series of topics on exporting or maybe market specific. We work with HPEC on this, and it's designed to give you information, particularly for those maybe that have never exported before. If you're developing an export plan or looking to maybe improve upon your export plan, you'll hopefully gain some more knowledge by attending these training sessions that can be used for your, to put into your export plan. Part of also the export readiness, before I get into more details on that, second component is our HiSTEP Hawaii pavilions, and that's what we're talking about today, international trade shows, and some other related types of programs to that. And then the last is our company assistance. So those are the three basic components. So to be eligible, you have to be a small business. You have to meet the SBA guidelines for a small business, and you just have to certify that you're not barred from having receiving federal funds. And then we also ask companies to be registered to do business in Hawaii with the DCCA, and to also be registered with the Department of Taxation. Those are sort of the minimum requirements. But we also do put an emphasis on made in Hawaii products. Actually, the SBA does require that the products or services that are being promoted through the program are 51% US made. So again, in Hawaii, we emphasize that we are looking for Hawaii-made products and services that meet at least that 51%. I already started to talk a little bit about the export readiness. So as I mentioned, this is one of those sessions in about 3 weeks, I believe 4 weeks from today, we have our next session, which is on legal issues and intellectual property. Another example of the types of topics that are covered. And then also part of the export readiness, I mentioned some of the partner organizations that we work with. When you register for HiSTEP, the first thing that we will do is we will put you in contact with one of our partner organizations to have at least one one-on-one session, so that that organization can help us and help the company sort of determine where they're at in their export journey, if you will, what their needs are, and so forth, and suggest some either activities that are part of HiSTEP or maybe other things that need to be, the company may want to consider. So that's also part of the export readiness. We do have sessions monthly. That just so happens in this month we'll have 2. And so if you go to our website, which is invest.hawaii.gov, under the exporting tab, you can find more information about HiSTEP in general, but also as we schedule these sessions, they'll be up, we'll have it up on our website and with the registration. I'll focus a little bit more on this, and then my colleagues, Marlene and Lyle, will talk a little bit more specifically. But as far as under the HiSTEP, so we have several, I have pictures here, but I'll put up the next slide, which is the list of trade shows for this year. So we've selected, and we work with the Hawaii Department of Agriculture, selected trade shows that we believe are good for our Hawaii companies. As you can see, most of them are in the Japan market, but these hit upon products that are that we feel will benefit from these trade shows. What we do is we subsidize the majority of the cost for the trade shows. So we'll pay for the trade show space. We build out, we do a special built pavilion for Hawaii products, and then we will recruit them, put out a recruitment notice, and then we'll take Hawaii companies with us. Companies do pay a small participation fee. I would say it's maybe a quarter or less of what it would cost a company to go into a trade show on their own. As you can see, we have 2 coming up next week already. We have FoodX in Japan, in Tokyo, and the Natural Products Expo West in Anaheim. Companies are required to pay their own travel costs and other costs that they may incur. But as I said, we're trying to make it affordable for small businesses to be in these big shows, and then also to benefit from the overall Hawaii banner, so to speak. If we, it's kind of it's a lot more powerful when there are a number of companies that go in together under the Hawaii banner. So that's our Hawaii pavilions. And then the last component is the company assistance. So company assistance, we actually closed the applications in January and have awarded funds for this year. But what it is companies have the opportunity to apply. Again, this is on a competitive basis. And the main focus is your export plan. You present your export plan, and you explain what market it is you want to go into, why you want to go into it. Maybe you've done, hopefully you've done a little research as to why that's the country that you want to go into. And then give us a plan for how you are looking at spending your funding. So if you're a new to export company, you can apply for up to $5,000. And then if you are already an experienced exporting company, you can apply for up to $15,000. So on the usual cycle, just to let you know, we normally put out the applications in November and then make them, then they're due the January following. So that's our normal cycle. Of course, granted that we still receive funds from SBA because we normally don't get notified by SBA until September if we have funding for the following year. And as it says, the program, if you're awarded funding, it's on a reimbursement basis. And so here's a list of the kinds of expenses that can be paid for, and I highlighted those expenses that are specific to trade shows. As you can see, airfare, so we only reimburse for airfare. I know people have asked about other travel costs. The program only, will only reimburse for airfare. You can pay for trade show booth rentals. Now, this doesn't have to be trade shows that are Hawaii pavilions. In fact, we like to see that you're looking at other trade shows in the particular market that you are interested in. So trade show costs, so booth rental, any other sort of build out costs for your booth, and that would include if you hire any interpreters, shipping to and from the show. Those are, like I said, I highlighted those because those are directly related to trade shows. But I'll go back. It can also, funds can also be paid for website translation, e-commerce if you're starting a direct-to-consumer, or some people actually do e-commerce to other business buyers, B2B. But so e-commerce, digital marketing, international marketing, things like Gold Key service with the U.S. Commercial Service. Some of the, if those of you that might not be familiar, they're part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and they're located in embassies and consulates around the world. And this organization is specific, their specific task is to help U.S. companies do business in the country in which they're located. So they have various types of programs that companies can use to help explore the market, to find possible partners, et cetera. So funds can be used to reimburse for those types of costs. It can also be used to ship sample products. If you have a buyer that might be interested, doesn't want to do a full order, they just want samples, you can do that. Compliance testing for those that might have a product that needs to go through testing and get certified in order to be exported into that particular country. Other types of things, export research, trade credit insurance, and for foreign buyer credit reports. And then you can also, the last thing I have listed is use it for consultants for market entry strategy. Now, SBA is a little strict on this because they want to make sure that these are not services that are already offered by the U.S. Department of Commerce. So as long as it's not duplicative of what the commercial service people do, it would be allowed. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. What are we looking for? We want to see more Hawaii companies exporting. We want to see the dollar value of Hawaii goods and services increase. And we also want Hawaii products and services to penetrate more of the global markets out there. So that's basically what we are looking for with the HiSTEP program. To get started, I'll just put up the last slide. Go to our website and fill out a registration form. There's no cost to register, and it doesn't obligate you to participate in anything under HiSTEP. It just gets you into the pipeline, and as I said, then we put you in contact with one of the partner organizations to begin talking about what it is your company wants to accomplish. And there's my info along with Mark Ritchie and Lyle, who's here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'll be here throughout the whole program. Again, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it back to Rob.
Thank you. I have a question that I know somebody's going to ask anyway. Some of the pavilions that you show are on the mainland and not international. Can you explain how that is related to an international trade show?
Sure. So SBA does allow us to do trade shows on the mainland as long as they are international. They have international buyers. As you saw on the calendar, we are going to the Natural Products Expo West. It is one of the largest trade shows in that space of natural products, and they do attract a lot of international buyers, so yes.
What if one of our companies wanted to attend a trade show that was on the mainland? It's not a pavilion that Hawaii is sponsoring, but it could be a huge show in Chicago or Miami or something, but it was clearly an international trade show. How do they get approval to attend that trade show and offset it with some HiSTEP funds?
So basically, you would, so this would probably be someone that's applying for company assistance if they're looking for funding to help. So as part of your plan, you would need to show what the percentage, that's basically what we look for, how many percentage of buyers, and the trade shows will have, the trade show organizers will have that kind of information as far as, in the past, these are the percentages of, buyers that have come from different countries, I'm sorry.
Great. And last question.
Just to assure us.
Agriculture-specific shows or service provider-specific shows, those would also be covered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, fantastic. Our next speaker will be Lyle Fujikawa. He is going to talk about the Hankyu Festival as well as Makuake, which is an exciting, relatively new program.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. I want to talk about specific opportunities that we have for B2C, presenting your products to consumers directly to Japanese consumers. So we've been very lucky to start working with partners in Japan. The idea is really to give your companies and specifically your brands and your products the chance to get validated. Right? You put it in front of consumers, they may purchase it, but they'll also give you feedback. You can talk to them in person at these events that we have set up. So the first one I want to talk about is Makuake, which is a very new program, and we're very excited to get more companies involved and checking it out. The reason why it's so important is just a sheer volume. There's millions of people who are buying on Makuake. It's the leading pre-sales e-commerce platform direct to consumer, meaning that you have a chance to actually engage your promoting your prototype or your initial version of your product to consumers, and you'll be pre-selling. So you're actually going to raise your money before you actually ship. You have, in general, like up to 6 months afterwards to ship your product. But the key point of this is you actually will have comments. It started as a crowdfunding site. They really repositioned it to pre-sales e-commerce so that you have a high-end consumer base. They typically are not Hawaii lovers. It's just people who have been in Japan due to COVID. They're probably cooped up in their apartment, their condo, trying to make their life a little bit better. That little bit of luxury that they can, they're willing to spend. So you have a good chance if you have a unique product, first time to sell in Japan, and it goes across all kinds of categories, right? There's food, alcohol, snacks, things that will make their life a little bit better. Yeah. So again, the platform has been built. Their sister company does a tremendous job of marketing through social media, and it gives you just this opportunity from Hawaii. You don't even have to set up shop in Japan yet, right? You put your product out there, ergonomic keyboard, right? Who's gonna buy? I want to raise $50,000. You get your product sold. Then you got to deliver, which is, there's going to be a lot of things related to that, okay? But again, this is from Hawaii, direct to consumer. You're going to get data. You're going to engage with your consumer. They have a high, repeat tendency to purchase again, and it's so different from any other e-commerce platform out there. Yeah. To me, this is like a first step, and this can be for a startup company. It can be for a huge, product-based company that has to develop products, right? And you put that into your product development cycle. Okay. So we have all the information on this website, invest.hawaii.gov. What you need to do is you need to sign up for HiSTEP registration first. Then we'll put you in touch with Makuake. They'll interview you, test your product. There's a lot of background. We've done 3 webinars on the platform, and it gets into a lot of detail of the flow of how to execute. There are a few requirements in the sense of you must have someone who is Japanese native language capability, because you're actually going to be doing consumer communications, yeah, customer service, and there's marketing involved. There's the actual delivery, right, fulfillment of the product, and sometimes there's returns, yeah. Expectation, right, of quality and customer service is very high in Japan. So you must have that person on your team, whether they're a full-time employee or a contractor, or Makuake could help you find that person, okay? Also, too, if you have a product that is requiring a high level of approval, like such as food or skincare, you will need to have an importer who can handle that for you, okay? So Makuake has various agents that will be there to help you. Definitely, again, marketing is important. So when you apply, you will tell them, here's my current situation, here's my objective, and they can help you fill in the gaps, as well as DBEDT. We have other resource partners that we're trying to pull together to help everyone. But I think this is a really good way to start actually looking and testing the market, right? Going through Makuake. So it makes you commit to having that Japanese communications capability, really understanding your consumer, and really engaging with them, right? This is gold. You have millions of high-end consumers who could look at your product, and we are going to create a State of Hawaii, Made in Hawaii portal site, so that, again, just like pavilions that we have, bring a cohort together and have more power to the branding of it. So, but check it out. It's really worth starting. If you want to test the market, that's how you begin, I think, validating. The second activity is the Hankyu Hawaii Fair, which we have been doing for quite some time now. It's actually 8 years we've been doing this, and the basic information is up here. But what the Hankyu Hawaii Fair is a pop-up on steroids. It has, before COVID, we had 220,000 people come in to the Hankyu Umeda department store, all segments, all ages, spending a lot of money on products. This is your Hawaii lover market. So they most likely are planning to visit Hawaii. They've been to Hawaii. Because of COVID, they haven't been able to buy things. So there's a huge pent-up demand. The numbers are going to drop down. So we're planning for July 2023. I think the target is going to be 120,000 people, which is still pretty big, right? You think about it. So we have this partnership with Hankyu Hanshin department stores. They are the best marketing people that we have ever worked with, in the sense of they respect the Hawaii brand. They are looking for authenticity. They're looking for uniqueness. Again, the opportunity here is to make money, to sell, but you really are validating your product. You're getting in front of consumers. You're going to be able to test what works. Hopefully you have ahead of time, because there's a long process to actually get approved for the fair in the first place. So if your product, it has to be unique. It has to be the best selling in your category. Like, people have to know about this in Hawaii already. because that's the credibility that the consumer from Japan is going to look at. Right? Yes.
Do you have example of what are the products already displayed at that fair?
Right. So, for example, Diamond Bakery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have done very, very well in that. And if you can see over the years, they have been moving towards improving their packaging and becoming more sophisticated, improving the quality, and you can almost match it up to the activity they've been doing with Japan.
Do they require some certification like ISO of some particular product?
I wouldn't say it's ISO, but it's really about what does the Japanese consumer want, right? In terms of quantity, size of the product, the color, flavor, right? So, Diamond Bakery is a big one. Hawaiian Host has always been, but they're in Japan.
Yeah.
Hawaiian Host has changed, right? They're actually going upscale, upmarket with their Koho brand, right? Which they launched at Haak. Big Island Candies. Big Island Candies, yeah, they don't export. They look at Hankyu as a marketing opportunity, which it is, because you get all these people coming in. They have a limited amount, but Japanese love that, right? Limited edition, limited quantity. It's sold out in hours. Yeah.
They're special, they want something specialized or specifically for the Japanese community.
Right.
As
yeah,
Lyle
so-
said, that
yeah.
it's 120,000 people that are Hawaii files
Yeah.
that are coming in with bags of cash, and they don't want to go home with that cash. They want to take products from Hawaii back to wherever.
Right, and that's a very good point, Rob, because this is based in Osaka, but people come from Hokkaido, they come from Tokyo, and they will come to buy because they love Hawaii. Because all the consumers come, the businesses also come. And you see these people with clipboards, and they're all around, and you don't know who they are, but everybody's watching Hankyu. So there's that opportunity. So the four benefits of, I'm going to get this wrong, but you have a chance to validate your product. You have an opportunity to meet businesses who are interested. If they see you have a line of people shopping, they're going to come and talk to you. Yeah, I want to import your product. I want to help you distribute. Another point is the people buying in Japan most likely will come to Hawaii. They want to become your friend. The big selling point of Hankyu, they want the founder, the creator of the product, to be there to engage with consumers. Heather Brown is amazing in Japan. She does so well in Japan. Lauren Roth, you guys know Lauren Roth in Kailua? She started at the beginning of Hankyu, and she built up her business, so much so that a Japanese company came to her, and she got established, right? So she's really she has taken off. So Hankyu can definitely go use her as a success story. As you can see how she found what the consumer wanted in Japan, and she put that into her business. Yeah, and she was able to grow, and she has a retail shop. In fact, she has other artists in her shop, right? She's so big that she's able to bring other people along. Angels by the Sea has done really well. She consistently does. Yeah. So there's different categories. Apparel, accessory, jewelry, food, definitely. It's very much, again, the consumer who loves Hawaii, who wants to give omiyage to their friends, who wants things for themselves, but really wants to, again, support the Hawaii company, right? So again, authenticity, made in Hawaii is really important. Yeah. This process is pretty long. You can start now for 2024. We're finishing out 2023. It's always a rolling thing. We have in October, generally we have, early October, we're going to have a webinar about Hankyu and their approach and why they see Hawaii as such a great opportunity. Yeah. I can go on forever, but I'm gonna stop there. Whoever's interested, again, register. There's a forum here, interest forum. Get in the pipeline, and then we can start talking with you. So, okay. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Any questions before we move on? I like your description of Hankyu as a pop-up on steroids because it really is. It's a trade show, but it's not the traditional trade show, right? Where in this trade show you actually take products like a pop-up and you sell them, and Hankyu gets a commission for that. But you can move a lot of product at that show, and as Lyle said, it's great for market validation of your product. The taste, the flavor, the color, the packaging, etc. Okay, great. While we have the browser open, I'd like to just very quickly remind everybody this recording or will eventually get onto our YouTube archive here, and I'll throw in our disclaimer here that any questions you ask are being recorded, and they may eventually get into this YouTube channel here. But this archive goes back now several years. We're rapidly approaching 100 videos here, and I would point you to some of our content here on Japan specific, if that's what you're interested in. I mentioned to you gentlemen earlier, we had this Australia-New Zealand event last year that was great. But then we do content specific, such as finance or exporting of services rather than physical products, IT that's required for exporting, logistics. But the one that I think would be most relevant to follow on from Lyle's talk was, and Marlene next, is marketing in Japan, which I think is a very good one and could be applicable to many of the people in the audience today. So with that, let me switch back to PowerPoint, and we'll ask Marlene Hiraoka to come up and talk about the Tokyo International Gift Show, a huge event colloquially called TIGS. Marlene, please.
Thank you, Rob. Aloha and good morning, everyone. My name is Marlene Hiraoka, and I am with DBED, Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, in the Business Development and Support Division. So the Tokyo International Gift Show is one of DBED's, I would say, flagship events for export promotion to Japan. It's held twice a year. However, DBED participates in the autumn gift show, and for this year it'll be held from September 6th through the 8th. So unlike the Hankyu Fair, which Lyle just spoke about, TIGS is a B2B show. And so if you're looking or interested in meeting with importers and distributors, that would be a show to consider. Sales are not allowed on the floor of the show. So again, DBED's participation in TIGS is funded in part through a grant with from the U.S. Small Business Administration, and it's part of our HiSTEP program. So DBED has been participating in TIGS since 2012. Prior to the pandemic, there were at times over 70 Hawaii product manufacturers, Hawaii companies that were represented at the show. And it's held at Tokyo Big Sight each year, which is a convention center that's located in Odaiba in Japan, in Tokyo. So over 200,000 buyers, importers, distributors, wholesalers, etc., typically attend the show in search of unique and authentic products from Hawaii. So Hawaii, DBED has been participating in TIGS for, like I said, since 2012. So there are many buyers and importers who look forward to meeting with Hawaii companies, knowing that Hawaii will be exhibiting at TIGS. Again, they're always looking for new and authentic products that are manufactured here. And Hawaii's brand is known throughout the world, and especially in Japan. And there is an ongoing demand for new and authentic products. And TIGS is a great show to introduce your product in Japan. So in terms of how a company could participate, you need to be a registered business in Hawaii. And like all of our other HiSTEP programs, we would ask that you complete the HiSTEP registration form. This is required annually. You need to affirm that your products meet the 51% value added requirement for Made in Hawaii, USA. For TIGS, you would need to complete the application form and finally submit payment to exhibit in the Hawaii Pavilion. As mentioned earlier, participants are responsible for expenses related to air travel, hotel accommodations, ground transportation, etc. But as Jamie mentioned, our Hawaii pavilions are highly subsidized, and so a booth cost, typically if you weren't part of the Hawaii pavilion, it would be about $3,000 a booth. But we do put up a custom-built Hawaii pavilion, and although we haven't decided on the cost to participate for this year, in the past it would be $1,500 for a full booth and $750 for a half booth. So this is an image of the entrance to Tokyo Big Sight, where the Tokyo International Gift Show is held. Before the gift show opens, there is an opening ceremony at Tokyo Big Sight, and this image is from last year's show. So if you can see at the top where it says Made in Hawaii, that's the custom pavilion that DBEDT constructs. And this is a photo of all of the exhibitors from Hawaii who participated in last year's gift show. These are more photos of the Hawaii Pavilion. DBEDT also provides interpreters, shared interpreters, who will help exhibitors from Hawaii in their booth. Some Hawaii companies have staff who speak Japanese or who know or who have contacts in Japan who can assist them. But for those who do not have anyone who are, is able to help them with language, we do provide interpreters during the show. And in addition to the pavilion itself, we also have a Hawaii food promotion where there are plate lunches that are sold using Hawaii products, and also other Hawaii products are sold from this setup. I know I mentioned earlier that it's a B2B show, and so no sales are allowed from the floor, but in this particular instance with the Hawaii, I guess, so-called grocery store, they do allow that. Sales can be done from this.
But if you're taking skin cream or clothing or earrings or something, you can't sell that at the
No,
show yet.
yeah, that would be, those items would be part of the Hawaii Pavilion. Often we do have elected officials and other dignitaries from Hawaii who would participate, visit the trade show. And in this photo, former First Lady Donna Manoige did visit the Hawaii Pavilion and met with all of the Hawaii manufacturers. So Aside from the marketplace where plate lunches and other items are sold, from the Hawaii Pavilion, exhibitors are allowed to sample, provide samples, sampling so that in this case, this is the tea chest, to provide samples of their products.
HPEC board member.
So mahalo. Thank you very much. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. That's good. Can you reiterate the dates for this year?
September 6th through the 8th.
Sometimes it's in October, isn't it?
That was during the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. And
Do you know any other show after that or around that? Because I don't in mind that I want to go to visit Hawaii and Japan in September, but I want to go to like 2 shows, not just one. Anything else?
what is the product you sell or service?
Oh, I would just go on vacation. I
Oh.
want to see if it's possible that I can prepare to attend one of the shows.
Well, this is just Tokyo. Tokyo Big Sight has a show going almost constantly. So when Tiggs is finished, something else will come in. And it could be one of the shows I loved going to every year at Big Sight was the Tokyo Motorcycle Show. Maybe you're not interested in that, but that's the kind of thing. Then they have an enormous golf show. They have something is always going on there. And then out about 45 minutes towards Narita Airport, there's the Makuhari Messe, which is another big convention center. That's just Tokyo. If you wanted to look at Osaka or other cities, I'm sure you'll find a large trade show of interest to you.
So, as Lyle mentioned, the Hankyu Hawaii Fair is held in the summer.
In July.
The Hankyu Hawaii Fair is held in the summer in Osaka, but there are many Hawaii fairs throughout Japan that are held during the summer. So, those are events you might want to.
I know there's a lot of tourists that come into Hawaii within the 60%, last year was 60% people from Japan, tourists.
Okay.
Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
And if a company, is there space still available for this
Oh,
year?
I'm sorry. So, we will be starting the recruitment process in April. So, please be on the lookout. We'll be sending out emails. Yes.
Oh, if someone was to go to Tiggs in person to just check it out and not necessarily exhibit, where would they get tickets?
So they can, if they are interested, please contact our office, and we will be happy to provide you with some passes.
Most of these shows are free to get into. You just have to go and register, and you can register actually before the event, and they'll send you a QR code or something that you scan when you get there. But most of these shows are free to get into. If not, it's fairly nominal fee, maybe $20 or $30 for the week. Of course, 20,000 yen or 30,000 yen, 3,000 yen. Okay, thanks so much, Marlene. That was great. Next presentation is me. And I'm just going to go through sort of do's and don'ts of attending a trade show, international trade show. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you were here for that, by this point in my life, I've attended hundreds of international trade shows. And so I've learned over time how to do these things. I think correctly. And this year I'll probably attend 20 in various countries, in various industries, some B2B, some B2C, some this, some that, but some technical, some not technical. Anyway, let's just talk about it for a minute. So for essentially 30 years, I've done nothing but sell US and European products into Asia. And today I have basically the same job I have that when I got out of university, and that's just selling. And so that's why the name of my organization is called the Asia Sales Manager. During my career, I've been based all over Asia in various countries, currently based in Hawaii, but probably spend much more time outside of Hawaii in Asia somewhere than I do in Hawaii. Now that the pandemic is over, I'm going back at traveling with a vengeance and trying to catch up on 2.5 years of no travel. So the question could be today, if you're watching this, is why attend an international trade show? I think Lyle explained it pretty well with HonQ, that you want to get out and get exposure and test your products first of all, but then once you have market validation, get out and start selling that product. But as somebody who comes from a sales and marketing background, I think that you're constantly learning, okay? Getting market validation for new products, things that you're changing, packaging, pricing, et cetera. You're going to a trade show is an experience not just to sell the product, but overall marketing and looking at your competitors as well. Okay. By the way, I put these QR codes up here so you can scan and get to our documents. Here's a QR code with just my contact information. When you go to the show, stay longer. Don't just go and leave. Go early and stay longer. Visit your customers, your distributors. Post to social media the event. Tell your customers how to meet you, where to meet you. Make appointments ahead of time. Plan it. Don't just show up, but actually plan it. Work with U.S. Commercial Service staff, the American Chambers of Commerce, which you guys told me that you're working with Australia. Do that in Japan. Do it in Brazil, Germany, wherever you're going, Canada. When you get to the show ahead of time, look for the management office of the show and get to be friends with those people, because you'll need them in the future. This is their job, but you'll see them next year. They can help you get the best booths, corner booths if that's what you like. Find the supply store that's there locally. It's because you might need paper, pens, staples. There's usually a printer around if you need things printed up. Business cards they can print, etc. So I think also when you're dealing internationally, you're going to deal more, I find, with your phone and texting via iMessage and WhatsApp and, say, Kakao in Korea, Line in Japan. You're going to be doing that a lot more than necessarily saying email. So get those accounts set up and be ready to text people constantly. It's just a fact of doing international business. But I find at the trade shows it's just invaluable to be able to text people and set up appointments and be flexible in that regard. I also talk about once you know your booth and you know the show that you're going to, the booth number, et cetera, get all of that information out into the world by email newsletters, by social media posts and what have you. Let your customers know. I like to do 3 months, 2 months, 1 month ahead of time, send those messages out, and then after 1 month, you're doing it every week, weekly, and then before the show, you're doing it daily. Telling people, this is how you can find me. This is where we'll meet. Before you get to the show, if you have a local distributor already, sit down with that distributor, make a game plan for the show. Who's coming? Who are the important customers? Who should we meet? Who's bringing them? Are we going to have translators? What kind of samples do we need to bring? What kind of signage are we bringing? Is the distributor doing that? Are you doing that? Are you bringing it from Hawaii? Have you made lunch appointments with key customers? Are there dinner appointments? who's paying for all of that, so it's not awkward when you go out with those customers to see who's doing what. Arrange all of that ahead of time, make a game plan for the show. So your customer relationship management software, or CRM, I think you have to get that set up before the show so that you're able to market, as I said here on the previous slide, you're able to tell the customers ahead of time, this is where to meet me. You're sending that information out, hopefully from your customer relationship management software. So what would that be? That would be Salesforce is the biggest one. You guys use Salesforce now, right? So Salesforce, but there's many. Insightly is the one that the Gmail people like, Zoho. Whatever it is, it could also be as simple as you just have Excel spreadsheets with your customer names on them and emails, and that's your database. So be it. Many companies that are just starting out, that's how they manage their CRM. But get your CRM set up so before the show, so the data you collect at the show, you could easily put into the CRM after the show. Okay, in my opinion, the information you really want to collect from the show would obviously be the customer's name. Okay, family name, given name, an email address, that's critical. In the modern world, I think you really want a mobile phone number because that gives you WhatsApp and access to them that way. Obviously, you'd like to know their company name, the title that they go by, department manager or buyer or whatever, a physical address if you can get it. But these are, in my opinion, decreasing in value in the modern world in terms of what you really want is the email address and the mobile phone number. Those are the two critical pieces of information. Beyond that is a family name, a given name, a company name, title, a physical address, etc. Your business and the way you do things might be a little bit different. You might be doing a lot of mailings, physical mailings of postcards and things like that. So a physical address may be more critical than for another company. Now, we tend to talk about Japan here. Could be China, could be Korea. But those countries use languages that are not based on Roman characters. So should your database include the ability to have kanji characters for the family name and the given name and the company name, and et cetera? In my opinion, yes. I think at the beginning you might say, we don't really need that. We'll just do everything in Roman characters. But eventually, as you get more experienced in, say, the Japanese market, you would like to know the kanji for Kazama-san. That would be helpful for your email newsletters when you can say, dear, Kazama-sama, we're coming to the Tokyo International Gift Show, and you'd like to have that kanji. Maybe today you don't think you need it, but 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, I guarantee you'll definitely want to have that. Okay, so let's talk about business cards. In this country, we've gotten away from business cards and we're very casual about it. I go to trade shows in the US, Las Vegas or somewhere, and people, if they have a business card, they just kind of throw it at you like a blackjack dealer might throw you a card at the table. But if you're going to Japan, I would say most of the rest of the world is more formal about business cards than we've become in the US market. But certainly Japan, Korea, other parts of Asia are still pretty formal. Japan may be the most formal, and there's a way to exchange the business cards and what have you. But nonetheless, the point is, take to the trade show at least 250, probably 500 business cards, and have a case like this that you can keep refilled and keep the box somewhere under the table at your booth or whatever. Have a business card case that looks professional. There's great little ones you can get for $1 or $2 at a Japanese store called Muji. They're little plastic cases. They're fantastic. And just have it in your pocket. Ladies, have it in your purse or wherever. And be ready to pull out these business cards and make it look professional. And then when they hand you a business card, you read it. You don't just take a card and put it away. Take a card, and read it at the trade show, right?
Rob, what do you think that people make it read it and then they take an image of it?
Okay, I'll come to that. I think that's really important. Okay, this is my business card. I talked about QR codes. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I have on my card a QR code. So you could just scan my card and my contact information goes right into your phone, right? But it's the contact information I want you to have. It's not my personal email address and my kids' names and my blood type and all that. That's not relevant from your card that might be on your phone for you. This is the information I want you to have about me, right? You could also build in here for your trade show a website that's specific to that show with a coupon code that says, thank you for visiting us at TIGS for a 20% discount valid for this week. Go to this website that's buried in this QR code. All right, sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. Okay, power. Generally in Japan nowadays, you can get by on what you would use in US electronics, your power strips and this sort of thing. It's perfectly fine for Japan. Even the plugs are perfectly fine, except Japan really doesn't have the 3-prong US plug. It's only the 2 parallel flat plugs for Japan. So be careful of that. When you're going to the show, I would strongly recommend packing up a little box of things for your booth, which would be a power strip, any cabling you need for your computers, etc. In the US, I think that most of the rest of the world has adopted a roughly US standard 10-foot booth. Do you remember what is TIG's booth? Yeah, so if they use a metric system, it's approximately 3.3 meters for a standard full booth size, so 3.3 by 3.3. However, verify that because it could be 3 meters. Some countries are that way. So don't just assume you have a plain old 10-foot booth. It's really important to get to know that, and I'll talk about it in a second. As I say here, make sure you get used to the metric system at least a little bit. It's very, very helpful and will help a lot because once you leave the shores of this country, nobody really understands inches and feet and miles and pounds and things like that. So the more that you can speak locally in the metric system, it'll help you. I also forgot to mention here, for your booth, how many walls do you have? Do you have no walls, maybe? Like at TIGS, I think you might not have huge walls between your neighbors, you just have one behind you. At other trade shows, you might have 2 walls or 3 walls, and it depends on if you're a corner. And the reason that's important is that you have a lot of wall space that you could cover with posters or other things. So it's quite important to understand that before you get there. If you've listened to any of my talks before on international marketing or sales or what have you, you'll hear me complain about US companies using US letter size paper, 8.5 by 11 inch, as opposed to A4. And that's important because, as you can see here, there's a difference in the size in terms of the standard paper size that's used by basically the rest of the world compared to the US. Why is that important? Because if you have brochures that you're spending a lot of money on, or just flyers, and you print it on 8.5 by 11, carry it to Japan, for example, put it in your booth, when customers or distributors pick up that paper, take it and later try to file it somehow at their office, that paper doesn't really fit in any of their A4 files. So generally what happens when things don't work out so well, they tend to put it in the round file and they never see it again. So it's just a pretty simple thing to do. Now, it's not easy to find a printer in Hawaii or even on the mainland that stocks A4 paper. So what I suggest is just printing it, what you can there locally. Most of these sites where you'll have trade shows will have a printer on site that can print out these things, or You could have your distributor do it ahead of time and reimburse them, or there's online services that's very popular in Japan where they print it and ship it to your hotel, or however you want to do it. But try to do it that way, I think. Let's see. One thing I also suggest is having PDFs available, as say we have here. There's PDFs. If you go to the link in this QR code, there's PDFs there that you can easily download and send out. And I strongly suggest having an online drive set up with PDF files of your brochures and your catalogs and your flyers and what have you that you can point customers to at the show so they can bring it up quickly and they have it there rather than paper files necessarily. That can be very helpful and save a lot of time and energy and certainly money. We talked about these QR codes, but I'd like to spend a little bit more time on it just because it's extremely popular in Asia. For example, China. If you go to China now, you cannot function in China without having QR code readers and sharing QR codes with other people. Everything in China now is done by a QR code. And other parts of Asia started the QR code system earlier. I'd say China adopted it extremely rapidly. But Japan, I think it was Ricoh, the copier company, who initially invented the QR code, but it's open source now. You can easily get free apps on iPhone or Android or Mac or Windows that create these QR codes for you, and you just save it as a PNG file or as a JPEG and put it on your documentation and your business cards and your flyers and use it on your websites or what have you. But get used to that. Get used to it. If you're not used to it, all you do is you take your normal camera that's on your phone and open it and point it at there, and on your camera will come up a website or some action, and you just press that function on your camera and it'll do whatever that QR code was wanting you to do. Usually it's used for sharing contact information, but it could be, as I said earlier, pointing people to your website or a discount code or something like that. Now, when you get to the country you're going to, as I mentioned, you're going to be texting people a lot internationally, and that can get expensive if you're just using AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile. I use T-Mobile. I like it internationally a lot. But I also have eSIM cards for the countries I go to most frequently. What that means is I have telephone numbers for other countries built into my system here. So I have Hong Kong, I have India, and I have a US number. And what I don't have a Japanese number anymore. Later this year, I will get a new Japanese number. But essentially, when you go to a new country like that, if you're going to be there for a week or 10 days or certainly 2 weeks, I would definitely get a local SIM card at the airport. You basically just buy a phone number for the week, and you can roam around and use it locally to text and data and what have you. And depending on your US mobile carrier, it could be a much cheaper option for you, and it certainly works better and faster locally. But that can be very helpful for communication at the trade show. Work with your distributors, any other partners you have locally in your game plan for the show to set up a schedule for the booth duty, right? TIGS at some point, hasn't TIGS been 4 days? There were times when TIGS, well, some trade shows can be 4 days. That's a long trade show, 8-10 hours a day, 4 days of the week, and you can't reasonably stand there the whole time. You have to eat, you have to use the restroom, you need a cup of coffee, you might have to go get something printed, what have you. And it's great to have a schedule set up. And as I said earlier, you really need to be walking the show, looking at your competitors and other stakeholders that might be at the show. So don't marry yourself to the booth, get out a little bit, but set up a schedule with people so you know, okay, I have booth duty on Tuesday morning, and then Tuesday afternoon I'm free to roam around the show. But set up a strict schedule like that. Here's just a rough idea, I thank these people who I took this image from on the internet. But here's a 2-wall trade show booth, pretty typical. This angle here is typically, oops, sorry, this is 10 feet by 10 feet, and that's typically 8 feet on the wall. And so you notice here, there's lighting built into this trade show booth. You have to find out ahead of time from the show provider if lighting is included in the package, or are you supposed to bring your own lighting? Is carpeting included? I've been to some trade shows where the carpeting was the most expensive part of the whole booth operation. A lot of it gets into unions and how the unions allow things to be moved in and out, and whether you can do that by yourself or whether the union has to carry it and they have to have union carpet layers and this kinds of thing. It really depends. But usually the show organizer will have a package that you can buy from them. And the package might include this little desk, a couple of chairs, a plant, some lighting, and then 2 or 3 walls. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty basic booth. I think, Marlene, you said that if you were to do this at Tiggs by yourself, it's around 3,000. I'm guessing it's a lot more. I think it's more than that. Somebody wrote me in advance of this show and asked me to provide a little budget for what it might cost to attend an international trade show. And I would say, generally speaking, you should plan on $10,000 with airfare and hotels and food and local transportation and the booth space and carrying product and that sort of thing. I think $10,000 is on the low end for a 10 by 10 booth at a large international trade show. And then you can get into Tiggs or one of the Hawaii pavilions for significantly less than that because it's subsidized, which is a great, great, great deal. Okay. Many products will require testing, particularly if you're going to Japan. Japan is strict. Some countries aren't so strict. But if you're trying to sell cookies or skincare products, Hawaii has some fantastic skincare product companies. But the Japanese version of the FDA is pretty strict when it comes to those types of products because they're classified as cosmetics. And anyway, just knowing that you will have to get these products tested, to take them to the show and use them as samples at the show. The testing procedure is not incredibly expensive. It's in the realm of $1,000 per SKU, but it does take time, and you do have to give your recipe over to the testing company. A lot of U.S. companies don't like to do that, but that's just the way that it works. And the testing company will come back to you to the molecule. They will tell you exactly what is in your product. If you didn't know already, they will tell you what's in it. Japanese government bodies do not like preservatives. That's just a way that it is. We've had some Hawaii companies who have a lot of experience in the Japanese market, and they've actually changed their food recipes locally in Hawaii to match what is acceptable in Japan. So they didn't have to have 2 different kinds of recipes, one for the US market and one for the Japanese market. They just manufactured to the Japanese market, knowing that it's stricter and that it'll definitely be okay for the US market. Before you get to the show, when you get to the airport or what have you, get a couple $100 US dollars in the local currency. You can either do that through a money changer or through the ATM there. It's very helpful to have that local currency in your pocket in case you have to pay for printing fees or what have you at the show if you need coffee or whatever. Not all of these places you're able to just use your debit card for $3, $4, $5 transactions. So have that cash ready. And if the show's successful, you just keep the cash and you use it the next year, or on your exit from the country, you can change that money, any leftover money, back to US dollars. If you know you're going to have translators or other assistants at the show, I like to bring them a little gift. From Hawaii, that could be a little box of chocolates or something that has some Hawaii-ness to it. That's very helpful. They love that sort of omiyage. And you want these people on your team. You want them to be happy with you and representing your product. So I just think that these little tips are extremely helpful. Find out ahead of time when the show is open to set up. Usually, TIGS, for example, is the day before, and so there's a time when you will be able to get into the show, like say noon on the day before the show. And I strongly recommend you are there at noon the day before the show, because there's always something to do, and there's always some problem that you need to fix at these trade shows. And so just give yourself the time to do that. Don't show up the morning of the show and hope everything goes smoothly and your setup is going to be perfect. It just never, ever works that way. Particularly if you're going to a show or your products require computer displays to show things off, or any electronics or Wi-Fi or what have you. Just get there early. It's kind of common sense, but I see a lot of people fall down on that. Get a show directory. There's almost always a directory that's available, especially if you are an exhibitor and you've paid to be there. They'll have a directory for you to look at, and you can see where your competitors are or other people that you feel you need to go see their booths, and mark it out and say, okay, during my free time, I'm definitely going to these areas of the show. And that all goes into your your plan with your distributors, and who's going to man the booth and who's going to do what. I think you should spend at least a quarter of your total time at the show out away from your booth looking at competitors and how other people are doing packaging and displays and what have you. So again, don't be married to your booth. Make sure you take to the show enough supplies. I said you could have a little box of just goodies in that, like Velcro and scissors and hooks and tape and things like that that you might need to post things and take care of things that fall down off of the walls or what have you. But have packaging ready so that when the show is over, you have everything you need to pack it up nicely and send it back or carry it back or whatever you're going to do. So plan the pack up and the cleanup. Plan that before the show starts, because at the end of the show, everybody's running around crazy. All the other booths and the show organizers are running around helping people, and there isn't a lot of resources available to help you if you have a problem. You're often there just trying to get everything set up. So plan that ahead of time for the end of the show. All right, this is what you're going to do during the show. I think it's very helpful to get to know your neighbors. Don't be shy. Whoever your booth neighbors are, get to know them, because it can be very helpful. If you're by yourself at a booth, or there's just maybe two people from your company at the booth, you could be engaged in a conversation with a customer, and other customers are lining up, but your neighbor is not busy at that moment. Your neighbor could help by coming over and giving out some literature, and you can do the same for them. Or if you have to make an emergency run to the restroom or to the printer's office or whatever, your neighbor can cover the booth for you and take business cards from somebody for those 10, 15 minutes that you're gone. Likewise, you can do the same for them. So it's just very helpful to have a nice relationship with your neighbors there. I think having a little bowl of candy or mints are probably preferred at a trade show booth. Just a little bowl so people can come up and take a mint, and it gives a second there for some eye contact and maybe a quick conversation about, hey, come on into the booth and have a mint or whatever. Then, of course, swag like pens and these other giveaways that might be important to your business. You could certainly have those out there. But I would put them out sparingly. I wouldn't put a bucket of 100 pens at a time, just a few, and then keep the rest there and restock it as necessary. There's a lot of people that roam around these shows and just pick up a lifetime supply of pens while they're at these shows. And so, you know, why spend $1 for those people, right? You know, give it to the people who really need it. Do you need samples of your product? Again, don't put them all out there. And if you have, you have to classify your customers in terms of, like, say, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 are the people who you really think, these are buyers, or I know them already. These are people who are qualified customers. Then there's people who are kicking the tires. There's a tier 2, and then there's the tier 3 people who are just wandering around collecting pens. No, so kind of figure out who those people are and have your best samples, or even any samples available just to give to the tier 1 customers, right? Don't give samples to everybody. I mean, especially a small company, you don't have that kind of the money and resources to get away with that. So, you know, keep your samples for the people who really need it. We talked about the brochures and try to be A4 as much as possible. So some companies will take fairly expensive catalogs, right? These could be, it's not cheap to print things. I mean, these could be $5, $7, $10 catalogs of your products. And I don't think you just want a stack of them where anybody can come and pick them up. You might have one there for display, and then under your table that I showed, you have the rest of the catalog, so you can pull it out and give it to a qualified customer. Just don't have them available for everybody here. I talk about having that little box of strong tape and things that you might need for things that go wrong at the booth. That's very helpful. Sometimes a little multi-tool, you know, like people carry a little Leatherman kind of tool. I have one that has a small knife blade and scissors and this kind of thing on it. Now, you got to be careful. Some of these countries have extremely strict knife laws, and I saw a guy one time from Europe get in big trouble in Singapore because he had something like this, and it had a small knife blade on it, and that was very illegal in Singapore at that time. So just be careful, little things like that. We talked about 240 volts. Make sure the electronics you're carrying and the power strips and these kinds of things that you might take with you can handle 240 volts. Not all of them can, that you would buy in the US. In the modern world, as I said, this is really important at a trade show, but you will definitely go through the built-in battery in a day at the booth, walking around. So carry an extra power bank and make sure you have the right cable for that power bank, and then charge it every night at the hotel. Mobile phone charge plug. Make sure you have. If you need to, you can charge your phone at the booth, and you have the right cable that'll plug into your power strip. Do you need a laptop at the booth? And if you need a laptop at the booth, do you need Wi-Fi? Most people do. It used to be in Japan, the big site, Tokyo big site, getting Wi-Fi there was extremely expensive. And they would put in radio frequency blockers so that you couldn't use your phone's data system in there. You had to buy their Wi-Fi. Now, those days are thankfully over, but still, if you need Wi-Fi, make sure you get all of the passwords and you've paid for it or what have you. And as I said earlier, if you buy a local SIM card, you could use the hotspot on the phone to do your Wi-Fi. It just depends. Maybe your products and services, you don't need to have Wi-Fi or anything to display it, But if you wanted to bring up your website at the booth, that sort of thing, then obviously you need some kind of Wi-Fi access. So get that going ahead of time. Do you need tables and chairs like this kind of setup at the booth? So let's go back to what the booth looks like. Do you need this kind of thing to sit down with customers, or do you just need chairs for your staff to take a break now and then? So think about that ahead of time. Am I going to invite people in and sit down with them and offer them a bottle of water like this, or some tea or coffee or something, or can we just talk and stand like this? I have my posters and my samples on a display board, so I want to stand here and talk to people and point them to the things that are on that wall? Or do I have the kind of product or service where it's better to sit down and have a talk across a table like that? Figure that out ahead of time, and then work it accordingly at the booth. While you're at the booth, I think it's very helpful during the show to post to social media about how the show is going. Of course it's going well. We're marketing people. No matter how poorly the show is going, it's going well on social media. So put that out there. Some photos of your booth, booth number, how to find you, get that out into the world during the show. The show likely has hashtags that they've assigned to the show, TIGS 2023 or whatever hashtag. Put that into the show, into your posts. Overnight, don't store valuable electronics or anything valuable or anything that's mission critical to your show presence. It could be key samples or anything like that. Don't keep those under this table overnight, because just when you need it, you'll find somebody's taken it, okay? Most of the countries you're going to are safe and theft is not a problem, but if it's really mission critical, that's when it'll disappear. It's guaranteed. Okay, let's talk about booth etiquette. Again, a lot of this is common sense, but I travel around and I see just the worst booth etiquette going on. And to me, when I see it, it's like a really horrible, when I see terrible grammar written in somewhere. It just, ugh. And it's like that when I see people standing at their booth over here, standing on the side, nothing's going on, and they're just leaning up against the wall, looking at their phone, checking the baseball scores or whatever they're looking at. And I just think, God, it's so uninviting, unappealing for passersby to come into the booth. So try very hard to not play on your phone or your iPad or your laptop or whatever. Now, there may be a serious business reason for you to be texting somebody. I get that. But try not to do it like this. Try to do it like this so you can look and people can see your eyes and you're smiling and you're trying to bring them into the booth, right? It's really, really important. I also see these chairs. I'm sorry to keep coming back to this, but in my opinion, these chairs are very, I don't know how to put it. It's risky to have chairs because as the show goes on and you get tired, those chairs look really appealing, okay? But sitting down at a trade show, okay, then once you sit down, your phone becomes super appealing, okay? Gotta fight that. That's a strong urge there to sit down and look at your phone, even for business reasons. But we have to really try not to do that, right? Look appealing, try to get people in. I see people standing in front of their booths so that customers can't come in and see. They can't see what's behind them. So stand back a little and try to, get people, they walk by, hi, how are you? Have a mint, pen, whatever. But make eye contact with people, get them in. A lot of shows, if I'm not mistaken, TIGS might be one of them. They discourage you from standing outside of the booth in the hallways, in the pathways, and they will have people come by and remind you, hey, get in your booth, buddy. Okay, and that's good actually. That's really good because it keeps the flow open and available. But try to do that. And they also, in British English, they would call it touting, trying to get people to come into your booth, right? So you could go out in the hallway and try to push people into the booth. They don't like that. But just, it's sort of common sense. Dress appropriately and professionally. I think that as sales and marketing people, we should be always a little overdressed, more so. If we're a Hawaii company, in the Hawaii pavilion, it's perfectly reasonable to have aloha shirts and that sort of thing. Probably not slippers and shorts, but depending on your product and service, maybe that's okay. But look good, look professional. If your product is not particularly Hawaiian, where you need the aloha shirt vibe and that sort of thing, be very smart, casual, better dressed than underdressed, I think is the best way to look at it. But of course that goes with, you're going to be on your feet a lot, and so have very comfortable shoes. It's not always easy for ladies that want to wear heels, but that's just the way it is. You're going to stand a lot, and you just try to have as comfortable as shoes as possible. And if you're going to attend a lot of trade shows, you might have to spend extra money on really good kind of orthotic shoes, because that's a long time on your feet for that whole week. Okay. I talked about this business card wallet, or some little case that you keep here in your purse, or somewhere you can easily access it and get your business cards out. You're going to do that a lot in these trade shows, particularly in Japan, Korea, and other Asian countries. Constantly taking this out and giving people a business card. I say invite people into the booth and ask them a lot of questions, a lot of leading questions. What's your business? Where are you from? And then if questions. What if? What if we had a product that could do this? What if we had a product that cost that? What if we could get you 10,000 of these a month? What if, what if, what if? And then if you have a table and chairs, ask them to sit down and have a conversation like that and talk about things and try to, move it forward like that. Let's talk about after the show. When the show ends, Tiggs finishes on a Friday, I think, right? Okay. I strongly recommend staying around. Don't fly to just make a beeline to the airport and get out of country. Stay. Stay for another week if you can. I know that sounds crazy. Some people say, I can't stay there for a week, but actually you can. You spent all the effort to go there, to that country. You just suffered through 3 or 4 days of a trade show and you're jet lagged. Now your jet lag's finished. So why go home and get jet lagged again? Go out into the market, set up appointments, try to set up appointments during the show with customers that you could follow up with, and go see them, right? It ends on a Friday. A lot of trade shows ends on Fridays, some on Thursdays, but usually Friday. Some trade shows actually bleed into the weekends. But you can use that Saturday and Sunday to go out and look in the market, go to stores, see what people are doing in terms of their product, their pricing, the displays, what have you, and then have appointments set up for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays at customers, at the U.S. Commercial Service, at the American Chamber of Commerce. All of these things you can be doing on the following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so that you don't have to just leave on a Friday night, right? I realize you want to get home, but you're there to do business. And in my opinion, if you're going to a trade show like this, I think I really would look at it like a 2-week investment, that you should go a little early and stay longer and not just be there for the show. The show is sort of a hub for you to operate around, but you should really be out in the market as much as possible. If you met a great potential distributor at the show, go meet them. Go check them out. Don't just trust what they had to say about their business. Go see with your own eyes. You can learn a lot about the market just by walking around. I had talked about having these PDFs ready that you can send to people very quickly. I think that that's a great way to respond to people and steer them towards PDFs that are on a shared drive somehow, or that you could just email a PDF that's not very big. Most people have a limit on the email that can come in, the size of the email, so make sure you're not sending these ginormous PowerPoint presentations that are 25 gigabyte, and it'll never get through their server. Try to get the PDFs down to in the low megabytes or kilobyte levels so that it gets through into their email server. I think so even at night when you go back to your hotel, there's probably some customers that you met during the day that you could follow up with that evening, either by a text message or by an email. It says, dear Kazama-san, thank you for coming by. It was really nice to meet you. Attached is a PDF of the product we talked about. Hopefully see you again. And if it was a really good lead, then I'll be here next week and I can come and visit you on Tuesday if you're available. Something like that. That kind of thing works really, really well. But certainly after the show, when it's done, you want to get all of those contacts you collected into your customer relationship management system that we talked about earlier. Get them in as quickly as possible, and certainly within a month, but I would say within a week or two at the most, you want to send a follow-up email to everybody that you met and say, thank you for coming to our booth. It was really successful time for us in Tokyo or Berlin or Rio de Janeiro, wherever that trade show was. And we greatly appreciate the hospitality we found, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Attached is our catalog and our latest catalog. And look for us later this year at the following shows, et cetera, et cetera. But this gets to be important because you will have probably collected at least a couple hundred business cards of various languages. Some of them are scannable by business card scanner apps here, or the scanner on your printer, and you can scan them in and the OCR will read it and do a somewhat reasonable job of getting the name correct and the company correct, whatever. And you can import those into your database. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but you have to be really careful with data entry after the show that you get the information from the business card correctly into your database, because I've seen many times that name misspellings, address misspellings, certainly getting the dot wrong in an email address, whatever. Once you get it into your database wrong, it stays there for years. It never gets corrected, right? And so you have to be very careful at the beginning when you're putting all of this information into the database that you're extremely diligent about it. Maybe there's somebody in your company who's hyper detail oriented and can do that quickly and easily. Not everybody has that skills, but make sure you're very careful about getting this information, and particularly the email address has to be just right when you put it into your data management system. Otherwise, they'll never get your emails. It'll always be wrong. So again, be really, really careful with that. Usually the show, particularly if you're a paid booth participant, they will have a directory after the fact of attendees who registered, and they'll give you a name and email addresses and whatever. Make sure you get that. Sometimes they'll charge you extra for it, but it can be really worth it. Now, say a huge show like TIGS where you might have 100,000 people or more, do you really want all 100,000 people in your database? Do you want, let's say 1,000 of those 100,000, 1% are just people coming around to collect the pens we talked about. Do you want to send an email to that pen collector forever? Probably not, but you could look at that whole database and try to weed out, the pen collectors versus, okay, these would be good customers. I'm going to put them in my database. So double check that you're not just willy-nilly taking the whole directory and dumping it into your database. Once that's done, these people are in your database, and you should really get in the habit of, if you look back at some of my other talks in the past about specifically to marketing, you're trying to set up your target market segment and get your messaging should be to the point where if the target market segment receives a message from you, they look forward to that message. They don't press delete immediately when they see it. They don't mark it as spam, but it's actually singing to them. And they like seeing, oh, okay, now I know what these guys are up to. It's nice to see them. Okay, they're going to be at this trade show in Osaka next March. I'll make sure I set aside some time for them. As I've said in these marketing talks, not every single person in Japan is your customer. Probably specifically to your product, it's like out of 120 million Japanese people, it's like 1 million are your customer, and maybe even more specific than that. It may only be 100,000 people in the whole market are really your customers, and those are the ones you want to focus on and direct your marketing message to them. And as you go to these trade shows, you're going to meet these people, and it becomes more and more obvious that, yes, this person at my booth is part of my target market segment. That person over there is not part of my target market segment. I'm not going to spend any time and energy and money on that one. I'm going to focus all my energy on this one. And over time, that's where we go with this, right? So as I say, once you get doing this enough and your database becomes more and more sophisticated, there's iterations of the database after these trade shows and other events that you will be able to send a quarterly message, a newsletter to that target market segment, and they will appreciate getting it. You won't have any compunction about sending that message. A lot of people say, well, I don't want to bother people with my email. Yes, you have to bother them. But if your target market segment is correct, you're not bothering them. They want to see it. That's why social media is fantastic, because people actually come to your social media and click on it and subscribe to it, and they get further messages from you. That's like automatically opting into these things. Really interesting. Now let's talk about the foreign language aspect of all of this. We need to get to the point where, as Lyle mentioned with Makuake, you need to have somebody in your organization who can deal with the foreign language, right? If it's Japan, they have to speak and read Japanese and be able to have those email conversations back and forth in Japanese. But your social media, if you're really focused on the Japanese market, you should have social media posts, some of them in Japanese. Your email newsletter to the Japanese market should be in the Japanese language and written by a good writer. You can imagine, even in English, we know people who are native English speakers, but they're not very good writers of English. It's the same in Japanese or any other language. So you want to have somebody who can write well, who is working on the messaging for you and getting out good quality written Japanese. Okay. We talked a little bit about this. If you found a good lead at the show, meet with them before you leave the country. I think that shows a lot. If you enjoyed the show, let's say it's the first time you're going to a trade show, you weren't sure about it. I'm just going to investigate it. I'll just have a small booth and see how it goes. But if you're just a visitor, you don't even have a booth, find the show organizer, say, I liked it, this is a great show, I'm coming next year, I want to have a good booth space. Talk to them about that. Usually the shows, most modern shows will have the ability to book your booth space for the following year before you leave the current year. Not all of them do, but get to know the show organizer, because it's very likely the same show organizer, same person next year. Exchange business cards with them and tell them, I'll see you next year. I'd like to have this booth in that location. Try to get all of that done ahead of time. If you used translators, get their contact information so you can use them again and keep them in the loop during the year. So, you know, you send them a message now and then that, hey, we have a new product, we're going to show it next year. And, you know, it's very helpful to get these people involved as a stakeholder in your business so you see them next year. And it could be that you go to 2 or 3 different trade shows in Japan or that same market in one year. And the translators don't just work for the one trade show, they work for wherever. You can bring them to the other trade shows. And if they know about your products, then they translate it better and to the customers, and they sell it better. If you brought samples or pens or brochures or any of these other things, what are you going to do with them after the show? As we talked about before the show, you could make a plan with your distributor, or if you don't have a distributor, you have to figure out, what am I going to do with all of this stuff that's left over, right? Prefer not to throw it away, prefer to make it useful. So have some plan with what to do with it all when it's done. I mean, hopefully it was a good show and you don't have anything left over, but quite often, you know, you do have things that are left over. There may be some paperwork you have to do with UPS or FedEx or whomever that to get your product, whatever's left over, to get it back into your home market here in Hawaii or the US, or maybe you're sending it on to another trade show in Korea or Singapore or somewhere. But there could be some customs paperwork that has to be done with that shipment before you leave. So don't just leave stuff there and expect that FedEx or whomever is going to deal with it properly. Make sure you work all of that paperwork out with them. Then, if you have a distributor, you should figure out, before you leave, have a meeting with them. Okay, we met these people, this was great. Now, who's going to do what? You're going to contact this guy, I'm going to contact that lady, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and have a plan for all of that, and make sure that these key leads don't fall through the cracks, because once you do leave the country, you get caught up in other things, they get caught up in other things, and then some of these hot leads sort of fade away, and later everybody said, well, whatever happened to that guy? I don't know. Sorry, we forgot about him. Okay, we don't want that to happen. You're going to this show, spending all this time and energy and money on this to get these hot leads, and you have to have a great plan of what to do with them after the show. As I talked about here, when the show's complete, you're going to be tired. That's fine. It's normal to be really tired, but by now you're probably over your jet lag, and so take half a day and just don't do anything necessarily, but then after that you're recovered, and go out and visit the AmChams and the commercial service and the customers and the distributors and the stores, and see everything that's out there. Okay? That's all that I have for this part of the trade show presentation. Are there any questions or comments? There's a couple online. Anybody here have? You have a question? Yeah. Please.
So I'd like to do quite a bit of trade shows here in Hawaii. I want to know if it worked in Japan. I do about 4 a year. And I wanted to know, like, in a 10 by 10 group, I would have 12 chairs, and I have a monitor up front. I go and speak and introduce myself. I try to do it in 4 minutes, just trying to keep their attention there. Then we show a video of what's going on, the product and service, whatever it was. I noticed that it works for blenders, juice makers at other trade shows too. So we have 4 little speakers in each corner of the booth so that they're not blasting the sound to the neighbor and distracting them. And then from there they have a better feel of the product or service what we're doing. And then they get to talk to the owners. I thought it was more engaging rather than they're so busy they're walking past us. We don't get that communication yet. But at least they have a better feel of the product rather than brochure.
Sure.
Does that work in Japan better? I mean, as well?
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't really talk about it, but some of these trade shows will use all kinds of tricks to get people to come by the booth. The obvious one in Japan are the booth bunnies at some of these shows. The girls who probably could have a little more clothing on. that they're there at the auto shows and those kinds of things. TIGs they don't really have those kinds of booth bunnies, but they're around. But then the products can be demonstrated. There's professional people, as we talk about translators, there's actually professional people you can hire that give the same speech over and over and over throughout the day, like your blender people. If you listen to some of my marketing talks, I try to drive home the point that I find that the companies that are most successful from Hawaii in these foreign markets are, and particularly Japan, are the companies who can tell their story well about them. A lot of people don't like to do that. They don't like to make themselves part of the equation, but I think it's critical that their story is baked into the product and the packaging and the marketing and the whole thing, right? And if you go to their website, they'll have a little about us, or in Japanese, it's nitsuite, about us, and it tells why am I in this business and how am I doing it and why am I doing it, my love of the market and this and that and the other thing. Those companies do really, really well. So in that situation you're talking about, if you can have the owners of the founders or the people who are really driving the story of the company, if they're there in the booth and visitors can talk to those people, that's fantastic, right? And if the translators can tell their story really, really well and smoothly over and over and over, I think that goes really well. Of course, if you can blend the products, if you're smoothies or whatever your product is, that's great. The problem, though, is that it's very difficult in Japan to get the raw materials into Japan to actually have a blender going and use those products and that sort of thing.
To have a Japanese presenter to do that for you.
Sure.
So they can understand the language, there's no language barrier. And then if they come to sit because they might be too busy to want to just keep walking, so if you need $30, or $300 for a product, or service, if you sit down for 4 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is, after that you get the coupon, or you get a good sample of the spatula or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, sure, absolutely. A lot of companies won't give you their best of swag unless you give them a business card and they can see your email address on there and whatever. Then you can get the little foam squeezy ball or whatever they're trying to give away. But sure, there's all kinds of tricks. You just have, as I said earlier, you just have to be careful that some of the shows have noise limitations. So, you can't have a lot going on to disrupt your neighbors. They have the no touting rule where you have to stay physically in your booth and you can't go out in the hallway and try to bring people into the booth. But yeah, anything that you can do to sort of get people into the booth is great. Let's see, there's a question here. Do you recommend a vibrant color to attract attention that relates to your products? Well, yeah, certainly. That can be very helpful. And in fact, the Hawaii pavilions that DBEDT invests in every year are very nicely done with a Hawaii theme. And again, if you listen to any of my marketing conversations, you'll hear that I think our companies from Hawaii really have to build up and bake into their products and their marketing the Hawaii-ness of the product and get that out there front and foremost. And the pavilion is doing a great job of that for you already. So your particular booth in the pavilion could be colorful as well. Certainly that is very helpful. And let's see, do international trade shows have door prizes in the US, or should we bring one? Yes, it depends on the show, of course, but there's certainly something like that. And for your booth, absolutely, you could have a door prize like that. That would be fantastic. And again, you could probably, you ask people, we need your email address or we need your mobile number so that we can text you that you won the door prize and come back. Or you say, for example, we're having a big product unveiling on Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. and we'll have our door prize awarded then at that show. So you get people coming back for your product unveiling at that time. It's a great idea. Sure.
Thank you, Rob. All your experience is great to have here.
Well, thank you.
I got an 11 o'clock phone call. I want to head out.
Sure.
But I want to say thank you.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for coming. It's nice to have you here, Kay. We appreciate it. Any-
I have a question. I know we mainly talk about the Japanese market, but have you attend any of the trade show in India?
Many, 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 many. We only, one of the, I feel like one of our problems isn't the right word, but maybe a limitation with a lot of our discussion is always focused on Japan, because so many of our local companies are interested in Japan. I don't always agree with that. I think Japan is not an easy market to go to as your first international market. There's a lot of rules. Language is a big deal, but you know, some of our companies should be looking at Canada, Australia, Singapore, where we have free trade agreements, Mexico, and Korea. If you're really hell bent on Asia, we have a very good free trade agreement with Korea called Chorus. Okay, I love the Japanese market. That's not my point. Is not to knock the Japanese market, but it should, in my opinion, for most of our companies, it should be not the priority market at first when they're just getting into exporting. Right? Okay, but go. So your question was about India. Yes, I go to a few, at least a few every year in India. Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, Kolkata. They're different. Each of those are different. Why do you ask particularly about India?
Well, because I think it's a very big market, and it's opened a lot of opportunity for Hawaiian products.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people don't even know Hawaii is over there.
It may, in fact, as we speak, India may now be the biggest country by population in the world. At some point it will be, it may already be. They don't know, but it could be.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity, but if we base our product to meet the Japanese requirement, I think it's easier to get into other countries.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that's an example.
Absolutely.
Great example that we can learn from. It's to follow the Japanese requirement, but I think India is very good.
No, I agree with you. That's why I spend a lot of
area
time
to
there.
cover.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll wrap it up and thank everybody for coming. Thanks to our speakers, Jamie Lum and Lyle Fujikawa and Marlene Hiraoka from DBEDT. We greatly appreciate them being here and sharing their expertise. Please check invest.hawaii.gov for updates on Tokyo International Gift Show, Hankyu, Hawaii Fair, the Makuake program, and all the other programs that will be running. Our next event will be on March 30th, and that's legal contracts and intellectual property protection for exporters. And that's it for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. This is Rob Haak from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council signing off. Great, thank you. Great, it was great. Great job, everybody.